Asmodeus, the Lord of Hell, the Prince of Darkness, and a dozen other names, is the lawful evil ruler of Hell, and the only archdevil that can claim full divinity. Credited with penning the Contract of Creation, and holder of the key to Rovagug's ancient cell, Asmodeus is a brilliant devil that you would be a fool to try to outwit. He is known to be eloquent, tactful, patient, and incredibly brilliant, but when angered, he is wrathful and absolutely terrifying. Before we get started, if you learn anything from this video, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments below. So far, 72% of my viewers are not subscribed, but I put out videos as often as I can, and I'm putting together a set of videos that will be a primer on all things Pathfinder, with little to no spoilers for any new players or GMs looking to join the game. So please, hit that subscribe, drop me a comment, and let's get to reading this scroll. Asmodeus can take any form he wishes, due to a completely fluid appearance, which he frequently uses to his advantage. However, he is generally depicted as a tall, muscular man with red skin and furry cloven hooves. With black hair and two stubby horns, he is usually depicted as holding a written contract in one hand and a weapon in the other, usually the Archstar, an artifact he forged before his exodus from heaven. Hearing this description, you may instantly think of the Christian Satan, and that is a very fair image to base him on. As well as the obvious symbology, his holy symbol is that of a pentagram, with 5 nails driven into each of their points. There are multiple origins for Asmodeus, and even the god himself will not confirm which one is the true origin. However, his personal church does push one theory over the other two, but most other religions reject or outright resent this theory. Our first theory is from the Book of the Damned, which is a manuscript written by Tabris, an angel responsible for writing 3 tomes that supposedly holds all knowledge in existence. According to this book, Asmodeus is one of the 2 primeval entities, alongside his brother and equal, Ihis, forming what was known as the First. Together, the pair formed lesser gods, and eventually Ihis created mortals and granted them free will. Enraged at the chaos his brother had wrought, a divine civil war was started, with Asmodeus leading one side and Ihis leading the other. Eventually, Asmodeus would reach out to his brother and beg for an end to the bloodshed, and Ihis would meet him in peace, ready to put this war to rest. However, in his moment of defenselessness, Asmodeus performed the first act of treachery, murdering Ihis with a great spear. However, in a last act of sympathy for Ihis, Asmodeus left the mortal races alive, with their free will intact, and created hell to punish those who would misuse his brother's gift. According to the Windsong Testaments, Pharasma was the first god, and upon using an ancient object known as the Seal, which was a literal gravestone for the universe before our own, she crafted 8 new gods to help her create the new universe. Alongside Desna, Sarenrae, Ihis, Akachek, and the Speaker in the Depths, Asmodeus was brought into being by Pharasma's will. You'll notice that's only 6 named gods, and that's because 2 of the original gods have been forgotten to history, and not even beseeching the other deities for answers could locate any hints of them. In this origin, Ihis was destined to be the first god to die, while Asmodeus would be the first god to kill. So presumably, like in the Book of the Damned, Asmodeus murdered his brother, but the reasons in this origin are unclear. We do not know who in this scenario created the mortal races, nor who gave them free will. For the final origin that we will cover, Asmodeus instead began his life as an angelic imperial lord of heaven. During his exploratory travels through the great beyond, he would discover the lands that would one day become Hell, where he learned to commune with the land and hear this realm's voice. There, he was greeted by a serpent and learned much knowledge that was previously unknown. Eons later, after becoming fed up with heaven's obsession with mortals, he took several followers and fled to Hell, where he would go on to forge his own realm within its landscape. What origin you prefer is ultimately up to you, but his church pushes the version that can be found within the Book of the Damned. But if that is the true origin or not, and just an attempt to make himself seem more ancient and thus more powerful, is unknown. At some point, Asmodeus forged the Contract of Creation, presumably a set of guidelines that would dictate the acts the gods would and would not be allowed to perform, which was accepted by all gods of the time. What exactly these rules were is unknown, with no known form of the contract ever being seen by a mortal. However, rumors insist that Asmodeus has laced this contract with a secret that will one day lead to him taking a permanent position of power over all other divine beings. In the times before written records, Asmodeus teamed up with his fellow gods to imprison Rovagug, the rough beast, within Galarian's center. As the beast was shoved into the prison cell at Galarian's center, Asmodeus slammed shut the door and locked it with a large key that he now keeps locked away in hell itself. According to the Concordance of Rivals, another of Tabris's tomes, one day Asmodeus will use this key to release the rough beast in the final days of the universe, in an attempt to have Rovagug fight some form of unknown apocalypse. In more recent times, Asmodeus has been quite interested in the nation of Cheliax, and has meddled with its rulers at least twice in the last century. His first interference was with Queen Abigail I, where he signed the infernal contract that would tie Cheliax to hell. His second meddling was with her granddaughter, Queen Abigail II. It is assumed that he sent Countessa Lorethlia, an Aranus demon, to oversee her as a personal advisor and tutor. He has doubtlessly involved himself in numerous other ways, but it's impractical to consider traveling across Galarian, polling people for contracts that they have made with the dark deity himself. True, friendly allies to Asmodeus are exceptionally rare, with Abadar being the single god that is firmly by his side. As a lawful neutral deity of law, this is not a huge surprise, yet at the same time, I did not expect to learn that as we explored deep into the archives. As an evil god, you would expect a whole gathering of hostile deities, but even the gods that consider themselves enemies to Asmodeus have been known to be swayed by the persuasive power of his charisma. Asmodeus is willing to deal with any god that he believes will uphold a bargain, meaning he deals with everyone, minus Lamashtu and Rovagug. Despite their differences, he has been a patron to Shaylin, an aide to Nessus, a war supplier to Gorum, and an ethical advisor to Amade, although each of these deities are loath to admit the valuable assistance he has contributed to them. When making deals with potential enemies, he is careful to keep the terms of any alliance or bargain clear and obvious, or risk these parties becoming suspicious of treachery. After all, the Lord of Contract values his perfect bargaining reputation. However, he does have a harder time dealing with Aurori, who dislikes the god for undermining and tearing down the work of others. As well as the inner sea deities, like any demon lord or archdevil, he has had constant war with his fellow archdevils. However, despite eons of trying, none of the other archdevils have ever been able to outwit or overpower the Prince of Hell. Asmodeus is the undisputed ruler of Hell, particularly Nessus, the lowest of the 9 levels of Hell. No suns or clouds reign over this cracked volcanic blasted stone, only a vast and unending night that is lit by 3 red stars. Forests of ash hide lakes and seas made of the deadliest of poisons, with volcanoes erupting endlessly upon the horizon, spewing lava into the sky that never seems to fall to the surface. Deep fissures have split the land, with their depths emitting a sickening crimson light. There are entire roads paved in the bones of fallen princes that lead between vast palaces across Nessus, all connecting and leading to the Hellfire Throne at the Synod Eye. 8 thrones of salt and an island of glass orbit this throne endlessly above a bottomless pit. From within this pit, Asmodeus has the ability to pick any bits of knowledge from any of his countless followers, past and present, conjure any illusions, or view anywhere in the multiverse, no matter the plane, nation, or planet. When the Archdevil wishes for solitude, however, he retreats to Catofacul, a private extra-dimensional palace that no one but Asmodeus himself has entered. Aro the Ashen Sun is a lean jet-black pit fiend who is sold-in and disinclined to converse, but is both ruthless in battle and a strategic mastermind. Aro reports directly to the Infernal Duke Aezreal, the Untarnished Angel, and is never seen without a deadly orb called the Ashen Sun. This artifact acts similar to an orb of pure law, which in basic terms gives a +4 to AC against any attacks from creatures of chaotic alignment, as well as being able to quench any flame and spread utter darkness. Basilius is the corrupted angel-like creature that currently acts as Asmodeus' herald. Through the millennia, dozens of immortals have served as his herald, yet inevitably they anger the Archdevil and are disposed of inside a pit in Nessus to be tortured for all eternity. His current herald, Basilius, is held as the most perfect of all his previous heralds, for rather than simply elevating the messenger from the rank of his legions of demons, Asmodeus personally crafted him to meet his every expectation. An infernal automaton, Basilius is a being zealously devoted to the Prince of Darkness, even beyond the simple devil-kind allegiance. Although he rarely visits the material plane, when he does, he appears in the form of the greatest terror of that age. For example, if a plague was ravaging the world, Basilius may take the form of a plague-ridden demon. If vampires are on the rise, he may appear pale and bloodthirsty, or any other manner of appearances that strike fear in the heart of man. Fristax is a bright red imp that has served at least 30 famed diabolists in his time, with a role as the man behind the curtains in some of the greatest diabolical incursions in history. Quite clever and insightful despite acting the fool, Fristax is highly skilled at pulling threads and suggesting brilliant and terrible machinations that his current masters take as their own ideas. Those who offer the imp rewards in the form of kingly accrements appeal to his egotism and have better luck to sway him to their side. Asmodeus is a god of rigid hierarchies, with a strong belief in forming systems that all creatures should know, with the ultimate system being that of the strong ruling over the lesser beings, where the weak are subservient to their superiors. He is an omnipotent tyrant who creates and destroys as he sees fit. What mortals see as evil is the natural order of the multiverse to his vast and ancient understanding. Water flows downhill, fire burns, and the strong dominate the weak. Due to Asmodeus viewing mortals as lesser beings, worship is useless to him. Instead, he wishes to see the strong put rules into place and enforce these rules, as well as well-documented contracts written. He revels in the art of negotiation and delights in deals that appear fair but actually give one party distinct disadvantages. Those intelligent enough should recognize when such methods are used against them, and those who don't should be exploited. Asmodeus himself is eloquently spoken, surprisingly tactful, patient, and incredibly brilliant. But when crossed, he is wrathful, terrifying, and destructive. These angry periods are always brief, and he is very quick to regain his composure. He believes one's word is as good as a binding contract, with consequences should it be broken. As such, he is always slow to speak and guarded with his words. To him, humility is a burden that the weak must bear, and he opposes freedom if they interfere with the processes of governance. He is domineering and manipulative, hell-bent on discovery and conquest with little uses for kindness, compassion, or nurturing. He considers those who indulge these feelings to be weak, unworthy, and cowardly. Following his example, his followers, or servants as he calls them, are selfish, emotionless, and merciless. They view romance, tenderness, and sincerity only suitable for their uses in manipulating their opponents. With his dim view on mortals, he views even his followers as weak, but useful dupes, and won't go out of his way to aid most mortals. However, mortals of particular power, mercilessness, or finesse attract his attention, and he may manipulate fate to aid these tyrants, but only so long as doing so will further his own agenda. Asmodeus does not hesitate to punish failure, even fatally, assuring that incompetence is not repeated. For a casual infraction, he might taunt a mortal with a brief sensation of utter burning agony, or cause writing to appear to burst into flame, or to cause the mortal to weep blood. Asmodeus's edicts are fairly obvious for anyone who feels compelled to worship him. As long as you negotiate contracts to gain yourself the best possible advantage, rule tyrannically and torture weaker beings, and you show subservience to those more powerful than you, you are on a good road to at the very least not draw Asmodeus's anger. I'm not sure any are truly able to earn his appreciation. His anathemas are the exact opposite, with breaking a contract, freeing someone from slavery, or showing mercy to your enemies being seen as an insult to Asmodeus, much like his fellow evil deity, Norgaber. Both are insulted by showing mercy to anyone you have power over. Asmodeus's faith is strongest within Cheliax, while nearby Isger and Nidal also allow open worship, but any who seek to rule over others may have secret shrines to the deity hidden away. The Prince of Darkness is worshipped by creatures all across Golarion, though primarily this is limited to power-hungry diabolists, small cults, and harsh militaristic orders. Typically, those who seek a position of rulership or discipline, and diabolists, lawyers, and slavers are all worshippers of Asmodeus. Within the borders of Cheliax, Isger, and Nidal, worshippers of Asmodeus is open and publicly allowed, which makes these nations synonymous with devil worship, at least to an average citizen of Golarion. However, Asmodeus does not truly favor these nations, with the exception of Cheliax. He does not seek worship, he merely seeks obedience, and acknowledgement that his will is both the ultimate truth and ultimate law. He grants his worshippers magic, not as a reward for their worship, but as a way to bring the rest of the universe into his service. Like hell itself, Asmodeus's church is strictly ordered. Outside of the direct hierarchy are the Asmodian Inquisitors. These agents of Asmodeus command intense respect and even more intense fear. These priests will seek out disease and corruption in the form of disobedience or blasphemy and prune it by force. In lands where Asmodeus worship is public, the Inquisitors are quick to spot in their iron masks and dark black robes. They maintain a network of contacts and informants, rewarding news that checks out with coin and prestige within the church. Beyond humans and other civilized races, Asmodeus is most commonly worshipped by kobolds. His dogma of subjugation of the weak through trickery obviously appeals to kobolds, who primarily live in a society with a strict social caste and use deception to make up for their physical weaknesses. Coupled with his dual status as a god of fire, and it is easy to see why any kobold priests adore the Prince of Darkness. A typical service to Asmodeus consists of chanting long phrases without error, ringing bells, participating in or receiving a public punishment, and other acts of domination or submission that reinforces one's position within the church. Blood sacrifice is also allowed, but is not the most common from the gatherings my scribes have attended. Usually in the form of a bull, goat, rooster, or other animal held as being significantly regal, virile, or benevolent. Humanoid sacrifices are also not unheard of, but usually only found within groups that have fallen out of favor with the Prince of Darkness, or are performing a magic rite, or have a member that is attempting to abandon the church. Special services can be found in converted temples, usually in such a way that they blaspheme the deity once honored there, particularly held on important holidays celebrated by the previous faith. Outside of the temple, a follower may be granted special power by performing their daily obedience. This obedience entails using a ritualistic knife with a blade made of ruby to draw blood from a sentient creature, ideally an unwilling offering. You must then use this blood to draw a pentagram on the ground, kneel within the pentagram, and focus on the glory they intend to bring to Asmodeus that day. Public temples dedicated to Asmodeus have a distinctly Gothic, diabolical design. However, chances are you've never directly seen one, as they are only found within the borders of Cheliax, where they share space with the bureaucracy of Cheliax. In the rest of Galarian, secret temples can be found scattered far and wide. My infiltrators report that most of these secret temples are single hidden rooms or basements hidden far from public eye and secured against accidental discovery. As a matter of fact, one of my agents was shown a secret shrine that was located through a secret wall inside the child's bedroom of an affluent manor in Taldor. Surprising, right? Temples range from grand opulent affairs with silk curtain and golden fixtures to simple altars of black metal, located inside dark and dingy basements. While Asmodeus does appreciate the affluence wealth brings, he is more interested in sincere devotion to his cause than flashy displays. Shrines, meanwhile, are usually simple things, like standing stones, symmetrical rock layouts, or trees with odd markings, or even a statue of a ruler that was reviled. His faithful have an innate feeling for these shrines, and some of them are truly ancient, dating back to when humans began creating the first of these constellations. Priests will usually dress in clean and orderly red accented black dress or robes, sporting horned masks or helmets during ceremonies. The exact manner of dress varies with local fashion and climate. Cheliash garb has multiple layers, while Chili Nadal will favor dark red robes trimmed with rich black fur over wool garments. In humid Isker, priests will sport black shirts and pants with red or black vests and short capes. Like the Dark Prince, Asmodeus's followers favor rubies or other red gemstones such as red garnets or carnelians. Amongst wealthier or ostentatious priests, red-hued ion stones are very popular, as are maces of terror and magic rods, such as the Rod of Lordly Might or the Rod of Rulership. Maces of Terror are seen as a status symbol, which allows the wielder at will to change their appearance and clothing to that of the darkest of horrors, causing the same effects as a fear spell. The Rod of Lordly Might has a crazy amount of functions, appearing as a light mace in its default form, with a large ball at one end and 6 stud-like buttons down its length. It can cast Hold Person, Fear, or steal 2d4 health from an opponent and heal its wielder. The first 3 buttons transform the weapon between a longsword, battle axe, and long spear, while the 4th button will cause an up to 50-foot climbing pole to grow from the rod. The 5th button will return it to mace form, while the 6th will show true north and tell the wielder their depth below ground or height above ground. The Rod of Rulership appears to be a royal scepter that can command the obedience and fealty of creatures within 120 feet. Commanded creatures obey the wielder as if she were their absolute ruler, only refusing if the command given is contrary to the nature of the creature commanded. The Archfiend's doctrine is recorded within the Asmodian monograph, a 1,000-page text that covers history, the writing and exploitation of contracts, the nature of power, the purpose of law, propaganda, diplomacy, subtleties of speech, the hierarchy of hell, and dozens of other topics related to rulership. However, outside of this single tome, there are hundreds of supplemental texts, each focusing on, interpreting, and expanding on particular topics. To those unfamiliar with the complete Asmodian monograph, a religious discussion between two zealots might appear to be a battle over who can produce the most obscure reference, like a modern-day Marvel fan. Because of the church's idolization of laws and rules, knowing which one trumps others or which one needs to be bent or broken is crucial. A worshipper could commit a serious crime against the church, but ultimately be rewarded if they are able to justify it with a brilliantly cited bit of scripture and by providing the act was ultimately beneficial to Asmodeus. We have a few copies of the Asmodian monograph in our stack, so if you'd like to borrow one for further reading, meet with Mordrin after this briefing, and he'll get you set up. Not you, Bendug. You have to bring back the other scrolls you've left with before you can study anything else. Don't give me that look. We've been over this. Asmodeus himself cares little about the passing of time. As a truly ancient being, old even amongst the other gods, he cares little for specific days of the week, month, or even the year. To him, all days belong to him, and mortals should bow to him every day, not just on special days of the year. However, the churches of Asmodeus do recognize a few holidays, usually in direct opposition of good aligned holidays, such as the 10th of Serenith, which counters Serenray's burning blades, or the 16th of Eridus, which counteracts Imede's Armas holiday. Leap Day on the 31st of Eridus is celebrated, with the view being that this is an extra day to serve their god and offer him additional prayers. Cheliax, meanwhile, has its own set of national holidays that are associated with the faith. The Days of Wrath are held on the solstices and equinoxes, where blood sport tournaments are held. The 19th of Calistrial is Loyalty Day, marking the day that the House of Thrune cemented its hold over Cheliax. The 14th of Neth is Even-Tongued Day, a remembrance of the days the Cheliax Empire were able to bring Andoran, Galt, and Isger under their control, but is now more of a day mourning these lost territories. There are countless blessings and exclamations used by Asmodeus worshippers, but most are variants of three themes. Great is Asmodeus, a simple yet widely used exaltation declaring that Asmodeus is the supreme deity, and no other deity is even worth worshipping. Hail Asmodeus and power and glory to Asmodeus are also commonly heard. Lend me your might. Asmodeus's power is great, but is not freely given. His help always comes with a price. Such a phrase is never said without the willingness and readiness to offer something of great personal value in return, lest their cry cause a devil to appear, hand open as they await payment. The kingdom shall be his. Asmodeus claims to have once held power over all creation. It is destined that all power shall eventually return to him. This exclamation serves as validation amongst his faithful, a call to arms for infernal warriors, and a threat to all those who would oppose him. I hope this briefing on Asmodeus has been insightful, and given you a newfound respect for any contracts you may be presented with. While they appear well-meaning, it may benefit you to give that fine print one more look over. If I've taught you anything new, hit that subscribe button for me, and I'll see you next week with my next Halloween video.